Hi, I'm Clayton Collins, CEO at HousingWire, and your host for the Powerhouse podcast. Earlier this month, we had the HousingWire IMB Summit, and right now we are running into MBA Annual in Denver. I can't wait for this event. It's going to be awesome. HousingWire is hosting a happy hour on Monday night, so if you're going to be at MBA, join us in Denver. But today's guest, and I'm going to get into this conversation right now. Today's guest is awesome. Jeff Bell, he's the president at Uplist. And I'm going to categorize this conversation in four main categories. We talk about leadership, learning, loan monitoring, and recapture. Important things that I know we're going to be talked about at the Mortgage Bankers Association annual event in Denver. So listen to this episode. It's really powerful. Jeff's had a successful career as an originator and now as a software executive. He's got a lot of knowledge, a lot of expertise, and I learned a ton talking to him today. Enjoy this episode with Jeff Bell. Jeff, welcome to Powerhouse.
Thank you.
Thrilled to have you here. This is going to be a fun conversation as your background and experience is so reaching across the mortgage and housing industry from being an originator and being a leader in the origination space to running a software business that's pretty cool. And I'm excited to go deeper into the platform during this conversation. But I'd love to start out with a topic that was front and center at our HousingWire IMB Summit, which we just hosted earlier this month. And it was a phenomenal event. But one of the topics that kept coming up is leadership. And when you and I have talked in the past, it's been clear that your leadership skills have shined as an originator and now as an entrepreneur. But give us a glimpse into how you've developed as a leader in this industry.
I'd say it started with a lot of coaching. I first got into the business in 2002. I was trying to get into the business, couldn't get anybody to hire me. I got referenced to a company and I just kept calling them until they hired me. It was some people I knew through family members in the industry, and it took me about 9 months to get going as an originator, and I finally got the concept of what was going on. And just before I got going, the owner he came to me and he said, "Hey, you got to get going or do some business. I got to let you go, dude." And I was like, "Okay, I think I got it figured out here. I got a way to get some business, and give me 30 days." And 60 days later, I'm closing like 35 loans a month.
So was that coaching coming from that owner, or did you have to look externally to find someone to help you develop those skills?
Yeah, it was coming. I worked for Keith Tibble's Ernie Gary it was Home Show of the Day, became Cobalt Mortgage. And Ernie was kind of my mentor at the time. And then there was some co-founders that were also helping guide me as far as like what I do, how I talk to customers, what you say to them, how do you structure stuff, and just the basics. And they gave me a chance, and I figured the process out, started taking off, and the coaching really was. I started doing really well I was 6 months straight. I was closing 5, 6, 7 million a month, and Ernie said to me, he said, "Hey, you need a business coach. You need to go coach with Steve Scanlon, who's been my coach now for 20 years. I was like, "I don't need a coach. I'm doing great." And he goes, "It'll take you to another level because everybody, you get coaching, they're going to take you to a level that's higher than where you're at, just like professional athletes, anything else." So finally, and I was like, "No." And finally he said, "I'll pay for it." He goes, you get going with it. If you don't like it, I'll pay for it. You can cancel it." I was like, "Fine, whatever, it's free." So I get a coach, and that really changed my life. It brought a lot of structure. It brought a lot of focus, and not just in the business, but really like broad business stuff, life planning, family stuff, health, everything. It just kind of was really all encompassing to really kind of get me focused in a direction of what am I waking up to do every day.
So I've mentioned this on a Powerhouse episode earlier this month, but at the HousingWire IMB Summit, Sean Panosian from Guaranteed Rate talked about treating his business as a mortgage originator and a leader of a large team like a professional sport. And like he says, I am an athlete and my sport of choice is mortgage banking. And that really, like, for me, kicked off a lot of thoughts on like the parallels between the level of training, preparation, coaching, that you think about as being commonplace in sports, but in business, it's sometimes coaching is underemphasized, underinvested in, and some people just aren't coachable. So did you have to do any work on yourself to make sure you were coachable and able to take Steve's expertise? You get Steve Scanlon, right?
Yeah.
And take his expertise and actually bring it to practice?
I think so. There was a period of time where I didn't coach with Steve. So, and this, there's some relevance here. Probably somewhere 7-8 years into it, he had left the company. I coached with some other coaches that were also good. But there was the way that Steve coached me. I had an opinion that I was really good at what I did. And Steve, he didn't let that get in the way of his way that he coaches me. Like, hey, you listen to me here. Here's the way that we approach this or that or whatever the topic is. Where some other coaches I'd talked to didn't really hold that same assertiveness to me, and so I think everybody's different in the way they learn. For me, because of the assertiveness he had on me, and the respect I had for him, it allowed me to really take the structure that he had given me and go, okay, this is tough. He gave me plans and ways to work through things that really resonated with the way that my mind works. So it was pretty easy for me to follow him as a coach.
Did the coaching, either from like executive leadership or coach, extend to goal setting and like developing a view of what great really looks like?
Oh, huge. Yeah. Yeah. They, some of it was life planning. So there's life planning, business planning. The life planning was really like, it's broadly select 6 or 7 areas of your life that you want to focus on, whether it's health or spiritual or business, finance, whatever, and have a mentor for each one of those areas. They can be totally different. Like my mentor for business was one person, my mentor for health was a different person, and choosing where you see yourself being 15, 20 years down the road in each one of those areas, and breaking it down to what steps do you need to take all the way down to daily in order to achieve those for 15 years down the road. And so it really gives you a roadmap. And if you lay it out properly, when you're sitting there in a given day, or maybe you're thinking about buying a new car, you look at it and go, does that fit my life plan? Nope. Or maybe it does, or, whatever it is, having a roadmap really makes it simple to make a decision, maybe on what you're doing business-wise, some marketing, who you're doing business with, how much time you're spending in business versus with family. So it really gives you a structure on just kind of knowing I got a plan to follow.
Yeah. And so when I think about life planning and business planning, there's, I always come back to, time management. Like, how am I going to invest my time? And then how do I also invest my time in the things that I can control, and making sure that energy is going to the right place. As you built your career as a lender, as an originator, and now as an entrepreneur in the technology space, how have you managed your time to make sure that energy goes to the right place? You don't get distracted into the things that you can't control.
Sure. So I used to think everything was about production. So how do I become the biggest producer, doing the most volume? It wasn't so much about the money. It was about this challenge of being the best at something. And so I'd put in 10, 12, 14-hour days. And this is pre-kids. And I became a regional manager at one point. And I couldn't understand why the people that were doing $1 million a month or 500,000 a month, that's all they did. And I was like, there's so much business out there. And a lot of people, I was showing up for work at 7 a.m. and then I'd, work in the office all day and then go home. And a lot of people would show up till 10, 11 o'clock in the morning. And it didn't resonate with me. Looking back now, I look at, there's people go through seasons in life. Some people are lazy, but some people are just going through a season of life where it's just what's important to them. Like, hey, my kids are more important to me. And a lot of things, unless you've walked in somebody else's shoes, you really don't. You can't judge them. As soon as I had kids, everything changed. And so we went from my wife in the business 22 years, another workaholic. We stepped back quite a bit about 7-8 years ago and kind of reset from a standpoint of going, okay, we know going to goal setting, like what's important in your life from a financial standpoint and what you have. A guy had told me, a mentor of mine quite a while back, he said, set goals of where you want your life to be, whether it's the size of your house or the money that you have or the car that you drive or whatever. Set those goals. And when you reach them, don't keep setting the bar higher, but find ways to maintain that and work less to have what you want. Otherwise, you're just chasing something forever. And so I took that was like 15 years ago, and I set those goals, and I reached them probably like 9 years ago. And what happened was I started deciding, how do I work at a 6 or 8 hour day? Because I know how to work really, really efficient. How do I work really efficient in that time and maintain and just go, the rest of my time is spent with family or friends or whoever it might be. And that allowed me to really figure out the balance that was important for me to be able to spend time with my kids while they're still in the house and not be a workaholic like I used to be. And it also made me realize that don't judge people for not working 12, 14 hours a day, right?
Yeah. And I mean, I think you brought up the topic of kids, and I think having a family or having whatever other commitments in life doesn't necessarily have to come at the expense of productivity and your core business focus. And
Right.
I mean, I feel like I've found that as my life has gotten more complicated with business and family, you start to become pretty maniacal about what you spend time on. And I feel like I'm more effective today with more responsibilities on my plate than I was with less responsibilities on my plate. I don't know if that resonates at all.
Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely finding ways to be more efficient with what you do with your time, which leads ultimately will lead into why I started my software company. But yeah, it's there's a lot of stuff. People, they might show up for 6 hours or 8 hours in a day. What are you doing during that time? There's I learned from Darren Hardy and the compound effect. Pick the 3 money making activities that you should be doing in a day and try to spend at least 2 hours on those activities. And it's hard. Like, say, well, what are the 3 activities that really make me the most money or make me most efficient in my day? And it's like taking a loan application that doesn't make you any money. Getting a customer to say yes makes you money. Prospecting.
When we started talking about this, I leaned over to grab something out of my bag. I was at an event last week, and a gentleman, David Dodson, spoke, and he just wrote this book called The Manager's Handbook. And one of the things David talks about in the book is he calls it like the levels of learning chart. And like you put skill on one axis and time on the other. You start from this place where you have unconscious incompetence. Like you don't even know how little you know. And like then you kind of go down the skill chain to like conscious incompetence. Like, okay, I at least know what good looks like, but I know I'm not good yet. And as you start to go back up in like skill level, there's conscious competence. They're like, okay, I have to think about this, but I know how to do it. And then you get to a point of unconscious competence where you've learned a skill so well, you can still excel at it without having to be incredibly intentional about like the motions you're going through to bring in new borrowers or close loans or launch products, whatever it is.
It's almost coming natural to you. Yeah.
Exactly. Coming natural to you.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the, but that only comes with time. So like those years where you were going from, 14, 16-hour days, like those were the days where you were developing the skill level to be, to have like natural capability to like achieve just as much with less time committed.
Yeah. Where somebody calls in and the conversation just flows and you can rip through something and 3 or 4 or 5 minutes with a customer before it might be a 15 or 20-minute conversation, or let me research that, I'll call you back kind of stuff. And I think going back to efficiencies, if you can take that call and figure out how to be ultra efficient with that conversation and move that to a customer saying, yeah, let's work together.
In core business activities, I think everybody underestimates how expensive that comment is. Like, let me get back to you on that, because the level of distraction it takes, and like an executive like you or I to go talk to your team or do research and then try to get back on that person's calendar. It's so expensive versus like kind of being at a skill level where you can like have a collaborative conversation, think through, make a decision, go forward without the follow-up loop.
And it's a now world. Like people, they want answers now. You want to get an answer on like, hey, what's this bicycle going to cost me? You go search the internet, you get your answer now, or whatever you want on Amazon. How much is the house going to cost me? You get your answer or you should get your answer now, but most people are giving the answer to people right now. And if you don't get the answer right now, if I call you and say, hey, can you give me some info on this? You go, yeah, let me call you back. And you're going to call me back in an hour. I'm going to go spend the next hour calling other places or continuing to dig on the internet because I want answers right now. Yep. And so if you can keep me on the phone and give me those answers right now, not only does it keep me from going other places, but it also saves you time, your team time, and everybody else if you have efficient ways to get people the information.
All right, Jeff, why did you start a technology company? Why Uplist?
Well, I have a mortgage company that I started. By the way, I'm gonna side note to any mortgage company owner out there. I give credit to, because there's a lot of people that you talk to guys like loan officer says, "Oh, I own a mortgage company." Like, no, you don't. You're a DBA to a company that's actually doing all the ownership work, and it's not easy to maybe do a DBA too, but owning a mortgage company is insane. The regulatory, the compliance, the insurance, the all the relationships you have, the cybersecurity, the IT, HR, whatever. It's a massive amount of work, and there's a lot of liability. So I give credit to anybody running a system out there, especially with success, because I was decent at it, but I look back at the guys I mentioned earlier, Keith and Ernie, those guys ran a mortgage company crazy good, but I didn't realize it so much until, you go do the stuff yourself. You're like, okay, there's people that are better at it.
Responsibilities.
So anyway, I have this mortgage company that I'm phasing out of right now. But about 2 years ago, when the market turned from refinances to purchases, I started getting these calls from agents saying, hey, can you give me some listing flyers for my properties? And you smile and say, yeah, let me get some for you. And in the back of your head, every loan officer just goes, those things suck. You get them started. You're like, what rates do I put on there? What loan types do I put on there? As soon as I create this thing, I'm going to give it to them on a Friday. The market changes 50 basis points on Monday. Now I got to go redo it again for the next week. And it's just a constant cycle. So you do them because you're asked for them, but nobody likes doing them. So I thought there's got to be a better way to do this where you can connect to live rates so you never have to update these. And so I was building this just for my own mortgage company. where we create listing flyers for the QR code on them that has a listing landing page for that property where you can just search live rates, anything you can put in. It has all the standard stuff. So if a customer scans a QR code, they go, okay, I'm just going to put in my down payment amount, my credit score, hit a button. Everything else about the property is already in there, purchase price, everything else. And so it does a live rate search to your pricing engine, and it gives you the results. So if the market changes, you never have to update anything. Well, after I was pretty close to done building it, seeing the prototype or the early stages of it, I kind of thought, the whole industry could use something like this, because this is pain for everybody. And here's a time saver, right? It goes back to like, how much time do I want to spend doing this stuff? And so that's how Uplist was born. And we started that. We launched the product about a year ago, and it's done decent. There's some companies that don't want their rates out there. Companies that, you're sticking your rate on a rate sheet anyway on a flyer, but some people,
folks who say they don't want to sell rate.
Yeah, but if the agent's asking you for a flyer, you're sticking the rate on there anyway. You're sticking it on there. There's different philosophies on whether that's the right fit for somebody or not. But the biggest change for me was when this is where I decided to get fully out of mortgage and do software full time. Last year I was looking at like, what takes me more time than anything? And I do past client loan reviews pretty much every day. I've been doing it for 20 years, probably done 2,000 refinances from loan reviews, where we just go in and we look at the loan and say, hey, your rate's great, keep what you have, or maybe there's an opportunity to refinance. When your rate's 3% and the market's at 6.5%, there's not a lot of reviewing to do, right? It takes 30 seconds to write your email, send it off, but it's a way to stay in touch with customers. When you get to a market where we're starting to see a little bit of a decreasing rate environment, it takes time to go through and say, to do it right, you're going to go through and you're going to go, well, first thing, if I'm not a servicer, I'm going to go check county records. Does Clayton still own the property? Because if you don't own the property, all the other work that I just did was a total waste of time. So you check county records, you go look at Zillow or somewhere to see like, what's the house worth now? Then you go look at the original loan amount and say, okay, amortize it down over the last year and a half that they've had it. What should be the loan amount now so I get an accurate loan to value? And you're calculating closing costs. Anyway, you go and then you're searching rate options for a no cost refi, no points. If you find something that looks like it makes sense, you're going, okay, what's the break even period? And then you're going through and saying, okay, I'm going to go send this presentation to Clayton now. Well, now you got to build the presentation, write the email, send it off. That's about a 30-minute process for a loan, which is, if you're going to make $5,000, $6,000, $8,000 on a loan, 30 minutes doesn't seem like that big a deal, but it's mundane and it's a bunch of work. And so I was like, how can you automate that whole process? And we essentially automated the full loan review process where the entire thing's done beginning to end, where it's essentially our system reviews. You can put 1,000, 5,000 loans in there. It reviews every one of them every month and does a full analysis and says, is there an opportunity for Clayton to refinance? And if there is, it builds the presentation, sends it to me as the loan officer and says, here's Clayton's options. I click what I want to send you. I push a button, it writes the email, sends you the presentation, and I'm done.
So as someone who's done 2,000 loan reviews and now building software to help automate this, I have a question that came up on stage at our IMB summit, and there's some debate over the right timing of a touch point with a refi eligible or potentially refi eligible homeowner. And I think there's a little bit of like an arms race happening right now as servicers are getting much more sophisticated at those touch points with servicing portfolio borrowers, and originators are, for lack of better words, salivating at a refi opportunity in 2025. Who gets there first? How important is it to get there first? And is there a time is it too early to have that touch point?
Oh, it's not too early. Because if you don't do it, your servicer is going to do it. Somebody else is going to do it. I was talking to a guy yesterday. He's like, well, I was waiting. I was telling my customers just, wait till they go down more. Well, what if they don't go down more? If you can refinance somebody today on a no-cost refinance, cover all their closing costs, and they go down a half point in rate, that's a no-brainer. If they go down in a year again, great. But what if they don't? What if they go up for some reason? You never know. Like, we think we know the direction that things are going to keep going down, but you don't know for sure. So if you do something from now, you're helping your customer by getting them a half point lower in rate. It doesn't cost them anything. And if you stay ahead of the game, and as an originator, if you're proactively contacting them, your chances of getting that deal are significantly greater than if they get contacted by the servicer, and the servicer sends them an offer, and then they're calling you and say, hey, should I refinance? And you're like, oh yeah. And so you give them your rates, and they're like, well, I'm already got it quoted by XYZ. and It's happening now. But I don't think it's the only time it's too soon is when there's an EPO. You want to stay away from those so you don't, your company doesn't lose a bunch of money. But as soon as that period's gone, I don't think it's too early.
So I think time will tell how effective servicers are at Recapture. The talking point seems to be that this time is different, which that's doesn't always come to fruition. But it seems like the tech and the AI and the focus. There's some big MSR portfolios that have been built in the last few years, and I imagine those servicers don't want to see those loans run off. They're willing to go pretty far to make sure that runoff doesn't happen. How do you see this this potential mini wave playing out?
Yeah, I would say a couple things. It appears that some servicers are really good and really aggressive with it, and a lot aren't. And I think there are some for sure that are good, that are big, and so and a lot of those you might just lose out on. But there's a lot that aren't, and so what I would say is, if I was really focusing as an originator on capturing refinances in the upcoming potential refinance market, you're going to have to look at comp. Like, the loan officer is the most expensive part of a transaction. And if you want to give a better deal, you have to look internally and say, am I willing to take, I don't know what people's comp stuff is now, instead of 120, I'm willing to take 70 or whatever, and go give 50 basis points better, or maybe the company can help throw some in too. You're going to have to be aggressive because the servicers are crazy aggressive. And if you're so far apart, the customer looks at it and goes, I like you, but I'm not going to pay 3/8 higher in rate to work with you. But they might go for a little bit higher in fee to work with you, or an 1/8 higher in rate because they like working with you, they like a relationship, better service, whatever. But I think there needs to be some pre-planning right now for mortgage companies and originators to kind of get together and say, what are we willing to give up on our side to make it more attractive for a customer? And the reality is, refinances don't take a long time. So do you really need to make the full vote that you would normally make on a purchase? And purchases, we all know, take more time. So if there's a way to make less on a refinance and knock it out and spend a couple hours on it, then do it.
Okay, so coming back to Uplist and the new loan monitoring product, this sounds like a integration heavy tool. So like, how do you come into a lender? I imagine there's an LOS integration, an existing PPE, product and pricing engine integration. Like, how does that all come to fruition to make this possible?
Yeah, so we're integrated with a few pricing engines. So let's say you work with Optimal Blue, and you say, hey, we want to use your product. You sign a one-page addendum with Optimal Blue that says, turn on Uplist, and you're going the next day. So I have an enterprise integration with different pricing engines, and the way that it works is that pricing engine opens up the port, essentially you call it a port to us for any lender that says open up Uplist. and we're automatically connected to every LO's pricing for that company. I haven't had an IT person from a company touch my product ever. There's no integration. I mean, there's a technical integration with the pricing engine, but we've already built that. So it's really, as it sits today, you would upload, we give you a CSV template. You can upload 50,000 loans to us. We map them to all the loan officers within that database, and they're being monitored the next day.
All right, we've had this conversation kind of through the refi lens, but in a loan monitoring strategy, there should also be like purchase ops, or at least conversations that turn to purchase ops for repeat that come through this type of capability, right?
Yeah, I think one approach I've always had is review loans regardless of whether or not they make sense to refinance. For me, it was the best way ever to get a ton of business when the market does turn, or even when it's not. Let's say 6 months ago, we're at some of the higher rates where you're not refinancing anybody. If you're still reviewing people's loans saying, hey, just want to let you know, rates are still garbage, or whatever you want to say. If you're looking for any purchase opportunity or home improvement or debt consolidation, whatever, some sort of communication with them to let them know that you're still there for them. When you keep telling them to not refinance because the market's not good, the day that you tell them, hey, the market's good, and I think you could save 50 basis points or half a point, and we pay all your closing costs, they respect the fact you've been telling them no forever, and now it's time to do something. They listen to you because it's not like just some random sales pitch out of somewhere.
You've truly put yourself in an advisor's seat, not a salesperson's seat at that point.
Yeah. And I learned that from my financial planner many, many years ago. He didn't, and I'm not telling anybody what's good for marketing, not marketing. For me, as a recipient of information, my financial planner did send me like recipes or, how to winterize my house or whatever. And that stuff might be great for people and they might like it. For me, I didn't want any of that stuff from him. He told me, hey, I reviewed your portfolio. I did this, we did that. And it was associated with things that I looked at him as a professional for. And so I thought, I really respect this guy. And then I thought, how can I incorporate that into my business? And that's where we really started pushing on the loan reviews as the main touch point. And I really have to I don't know if Jeff Lake's even still in the business, but a guy named Jeff Lake back in like 2004, I did a site visit with him and he was doing like $200-300 million a year back then. I was like, how do you do this? And he goes 5 past client loan reviews every day, 5 handwritten notes every day, and 5 calls to referral sources every day. He goes, do that and you'll kill it. And
well, Jeff Lake, if you're listening and still in the business, give Jeff Bell a shout.
Yeah, he was great. I mean, it was one site visit. That one thing of those 3 items totally changed things for me. I went back to my office, the next week and started doing that. And it works. Like, it's so basic, but it's the stuff people don't want to do, but you take the time to do it and it works.
Okay. So if someone's not on Uplist, are you competing with Excel? Like what's the alternative? Like are people, if someone's trying to like monitor like past clients, like what are they doing before they're on Uplist, or like who do you compete against in this category?
So there's a lot of products out there that are doing rate alerts. So you can call it loan monitoring, rate alerts, whatever you want to call it, where it says, hey, Clayton's at 6.5%. The market's at 5 3/4, whatever. Here's your refinance opportunity. That trigger has now just caused you 30 minutes of work. All the stuff that I talked about before, which is great. I mean, I was using Excel. I had built an automated Excel thing 15 years ago to monitor my loans. So I just go through and look for color coding on like who should refinance. But most of the market right now, they're now sending emails out and saying, here's Clayton's opportunity to refinance, but I still have to go through and do my 30 minutes of work. So we've eliminated the 30 minutes of work. So our system does the entire analysis, builds a presentation, calculates the stuff. It watches for EPOs. It does net tangible benefit analysis for FHA and VA. So it gives the highest likelihood of eliminating false positives. And given the LO, they get this notice, Clayton might be able to refinance. It's literally, you click on it, you look at his options and say, I want to send him these 3 options, and I'm going to recommend number 2. You hit a button, the whole thing's done in 1 minute. And so the current systems out there are really just notifying you of an opportunity, where our system does the whole strategy all built into one deal.
And in terms of go to market, can an individual LO start using Uplist? You have to go through corporate and do the enterprise deals. How do you go to market here?
Well, you typically, for any company that's got a vendor management department, you're going to go through vendor management, compliance review, all that kind of stuff. And once that's passed, we just say, hey, go tell OB to turn us on, or whatever the pricing engine is. And then you're done. But it's that if one person wants to use it in a company of 1,000 LOs, you still have to go through vendor management, get it all approved, because we have to tie to the pricing engine, and the pricing engine doesn't get turned on until vendor management approves it, which is fine. And I'm a compliance nut, so we built it ultra compliant. It tracks everything. It keeps record of anything that gets sent through the system. LOs can't fudge the pricing. It's pretty locked down compliance wise. And so the process in order to get going is really just getting into the corporate space to say, yeah, these guys are okay to use. And then one person can sign up, or 20, or an entire enterprise.
All right. Boom. Jeff, that's a wrap. Thank you for joining me on Powerhouse today. Really cool to hear about your background that has, led through origination and talking about coaching and leadership. I think that's super important topics for this Powerhouse audience of leaders in the housing industry, and very cool to hear about the future of Uplist.
Cool. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.